The Ringing Cedars, Series 18, Anastasia, Book 1, Vladimir Megre. Who gets stung by bees? There should be at least one family of bees on each plot of land. I told her that only some of us can talk to bees. People learn this in special schools, but even they don't always succeed. In the last 1,000 years, only 2 people on Earth have managed to come slightly closer to understanding the unique living mechanism. Who are they? These are 2 monks, and they were declared saints. You can find about them in your books, stored in the storerooms of the monastery. What, Anastasia, are you reading church literature? Where? When? You don't have a single book. I use a more perfect way to find notifications. What kind? You're speaking vaguely again. You promised that there won't be any mysticism or fantasy. I will talk about him. I can try to give advice. Now you won't understand, and that's simple and natural. Well, how should bees be taken care of on land? It is simply necessary to make a nest for them, as they have in natural conditions, and that's all. Further work will consist only of taking some honey, wax and other very beneficial substances for humans, which they produced from the bees. Anastasia, it's not easy at all. And who knows what this natural nest should be like? Well, if she told you how to make it from the materials we have, then it would be possible. Well, she laughed, then you'll have to wait a bit. I will have to shape it and see what, as you say, today's man has on hand. And where to place it so that it does not spoil the view. I added, I will try that too. She lay down on the grass, as she did every time she shaped her or, rather, our life circumstances. The eyes were closed. The whole body was relaxed. Later, she explained that every human can see at a distance if they learn it in a certain way. It is necessary to make a wooden hole. You can take a log with a hole and hollow it out, expand it or make it from boards of the type of beechwood. The thickness of the boards should be at least 6 centimeters. The internal volume at least 40 by 40 centimeters, the length at least 120 centimeters. Triangular slats should be attached to the corners of the internal joints so that the corners are somewhat rounded. The slats can be slightly glued. The bees will later attach them themselves. One paved side can be completely covered with a board of the same thickness, and an opening can be made on the other. The board for this should be adjusted so that it can be moved closer and fixed with grass or a cloth. At the same time, the entire bottom should be closed with a cloth. Along the entire length of one of the joints, slits with a height of approximately 1.5 centimeters should be made. Slots are just 1 slot should be spaced from the paved side with the opening by 30 centimeters. Such a hole can be placed on stakes somewhere on the land. The height from the ground should not be less than 20 to 25 centimeters. Slots should face south, although it is better to place them under the roof of the house. Then the bees will be able to fly unhindered by man, and they will not irritate him. The wooden hole should be placed horizontally, at an angle of inclination of approximately 20 to 30 degrees. The tiled side with the opening should be at the bottom. A wooden cavity can also be placed in the attic, but in that case it should be well ventilated. It is best to fix the wooden hole on the south side, under the roof of the house or on the roof itself. It is only necessary to provide for the possibility of accessing the wooden cavity in order to take some honeycomb, filled with honey. There should be a canopy over the wooden hole to protect it from the sun. It should be located on the access surface. You can isolate it in winter. I drew Anastasia's attention to the fact that such a canopy can be quite heavy, and the screen from the sun and the access area can spoil the appearance of the house. What to do in that case? She looked at me a little surprised, and then said, "The thing is that the work of your beekeepers is not quite correct. My grandfather told me, today's beekeepers have made many different constructions of beehives, and all of them foresee the constant intervention of man in the bee nest. Beekeepers arrange frames with honeycomb, and in winter they move hives with bees to another place, which should not be done. Bees make combs at the exact distance from each other. They foresee the entire system of ventilation, opposition to their enemy, so that any intervention disrupts the system. Instead of collecting honey, raising new bees, they should correct the damage. In natural conditions, bees live in the hollows of trees and cope with all problems very well. I told you how they should be grown in the closest to natural conditions. Their presence gives very great benefits. They are the most efficient pollinators of all plants and increase fertility, which you should be well aware of. It may be unknown to you that bees, in addition to everything else, open those channels in plants with their stingers, through which subsequent information enters them, reflected by the planet, which is needed by plants, and therefore also by man. But bees sting people. How will a man rest in a summer house if he will be in constant fear? Bees sting when the man himself behaves aggressively towards them, drives them away by waving, is afraid, when he is in a very aggressive mood inside, and not necessarily towards bees, but simply towards anyone. They feel it and will not accept the radiation of all kinds of dark feelings. In addition, they can pierce those parts of the body, in which there are endings that lead to some diseased internal organ of a person, also where the protective sheath has been broken, where there are some disorders. You know that bees effectively treat the disease that you call joint inflammation, but that is by no means the only thing that bees can treat. You said a lot about bees. I just added some corrections to that information. Settling a family in such a beehive is very simple. It is necessary to pour a swarm of bees here, and before that put a piece of wax and the grass of the honey plant. It is not necessary to install any handmade frames and honeycombs. Later, when the families have occupied at least a few neighboring plots, the bees will reproduce by themselves, swarming and taking free cavities. And how to buy honey in them? It is necessary to open the tiled lid, break the hanging combs and remove the stuck honey and pollen. You don't just need to skimp. It is necessary to leave one part for the bees for the winter. And in the first year, it is best not to buy honey at all.